Hey everybody, welcome to Watches with Dennis, and we will be continuing our Watches and Wonders 2021 discussions, this time with Jaeger-LeCoultre, or JLC. And okay, this one's quite a bit different. So all of the other ones that I've covered so far have focused on actual products that normal human beings will be buying. That is not what JLC introduced. Instead, because of the 90th anniversary of the Reverso, and for those not familiar, the Reverso is a rectangular watch, and it was invented to protect the sapphire or the glass at the time from polo strikes. And what it does is the watch face can actually be flipped and goes back into the case, slides back in, and it protects the glass from impact. And it's JLC's most famous watch. So anyway, in honor of the 90th anniversary, they've decided to show us something new. And what they came up with, and I'm sure I'm going to mispronounce it, is the Reverso Hybris Mechanica Calibre 185 Quadriptyque, which I will just call Calibre 185 because even though that's hard to remember, it's easy to say. It is a high-level complication watch. Before you get too excited, they're only making 10 of them. It's going to come in at about $1.7 million. I know, I was hoping for $900,000 price point, but really with 10, what can you do? You can't do anything other than talk about it. And I think the reason why it's worth talking about, or at least the reason why I want to talk about it, is this is an example of high horology. This is an example of what I think is so interesting about watches, to show people that while we spend most of our time talking about divers and talking about the latest dress watch or the latest field watch that we want to have that we can get, there are people that are pushing the boundary in design and engineering, trying to come up with really, really intricate pieces of work. And they can do it. And it's really impressive. And you don't really ever talk about it. And you almost never see it because it's too expensive for human beings to afford. So let's go ahead and let's walk through what this all has. Because as the part of the name Quadriptyque would suggest, the number 4, and that's the case. It's got 4 faces, and that's a first. So let's talk about the first face. So face number 1 is the default one that you would look at when it's mounted on your wrist. So that's got the time indications and a perpetual calendar. But it's not just a perpetual calendar. It's an instantaneous perpetual calendar. So it's actually supposed to cycle essentially instantaneously. It includes a month aperture, day aperture. Those are at the 12 o'clock position. And then it's got a double-digit date at the 5 o'clock, so big date. As I noted, the perpetual aspects, those all jump essentially simultaneously. That happens at midnight. And so there's also a leap year indicator. You can kind of see that up at the 1 o'clock spot on the watch face. And then if you look down at the 7 o'clock position, there is a 1-minute flying tourbillon that also functions as your running seconds. So that's a lot of complications. Normally that would be what we would expect in terms of a purchasable, expensive, highly complicated watch. If you look at now the second face, which that's the part on the image on the screen that's hanging out, not over the strap. So what would normally happen is you'd flip this and then it would slide back into place for those that aren't familiar with the Reverso. But this way, we're going to use the same picture for face 3, so that's why we're doing it this way. So second face, it's more skeletonized at this point, and this is where the minute repeater complication is. It's got a chiming mechanism that exists at the 5 and the 7 o'clock positions. That's where that is. At the 9 o'clock, there's the centrifugal governor. The time is also shown on this face, but it's got jump hours, and they're on this white minutes track. So it's not like the usual analog. It's more of it's the digital style. Now the minute repeater, and to me, the minute repeater is the fanciest complication that exists in watchmaking. I think it's way more impressive than a tourbillon. I think it's more impressive than perpetual calendars. I also just like the idea of it a whole lot back when you didn't have electricity and you would actually push a button on a non-electric device and it would gong out what time it is. And that's what this does. But it's not just any ordinary minute repeater. So in this case, the gongs that they have, they actually directly attached them to the crystal. And that's been done before, but I believe that was a LeCoultre thing from 2005. And so the reason they do it that way is it's supposed to be easier to hear. It's supposed to be louder. And another feature that they have heavily promoted is normally there's a gap in the sounds when there's no need for a quarter chime. So if you're not familiar with a minute repeater, normally it gongs out what hour it is, then it gongs out the quarter hours, and then it gongs out the individual minutes. But in most cases, you have that gap where it should be gonging the quarter hours, but if there aren't any, you have to wait, and then the regular minutes come at a slower, but you just sit there. And eventually you hear them, and then you realize what time it is, but it's not as efficient as this will be. So in this case, they've eliminated that traditional pause so that it's all more compressed, tighter together, so it's more efficient in terms of telling you audibly what time it is. All right, so the third face, which you see over the strap in the image, this is the celestial complications. And it's another first. So we've got 3 cycles on display, and I'm going to try and pronounce them correctly, but I'm not familiar with these. So at the 12 o'clock, we've got a moon that is progressively revealed and covered, and that is what corresponds to the synodic cycle as seen in the northern hemisphere. On the left side, kind of at the lower half, that's the draconic cycle. And that's the cycle that indicates the intersection of the orbit of the moon with that of the Earth around the sun. And to the right of the draconic cycle is a representation of the moon tracing an orbit around the Earth. And that's the anomalistic cycle. And that's the cycle that's supposed to show the varying distance between the Earth and the moon. Are you confused yet? I am. I read about space stuff once upon a time, but I don't know anything about these orbits. So I'm sure those of you who do will find this incredibly cool. Finally, let's talk about the fourth face. So that's the case back. That's the part that would normally be against your wrist. But when you take the watch off, it's visible. And in this case, you see the age of the moon as it would be in the southern hemisphere. Again, it's not something people buy. Well, 10 people might buy it. But it's not something I would buy. It's not something I could buy. But it's really complicated. And it just shows just how much engineering can still be done with something that is entirely driven by a non-electric system. There's no computer chips. There's no quartz powering this. It's all mechanical. Interestingly, I didn't know how they were going to toggle. Like, how do you advance all of this stuff when it's really only phase 1 and phase 2? That's all the mechanics are in that. And apparently they've done this before, but at midnight, a pin comes out and it actually actuates the rest of those other devices on phase 3 and phase 4 so that they advance. So it's an interesting solution to overly complicated watch. Now, the thing I sort of want to end with is they had a really interesting documentary, almost like a mini doc, where they walked through what all was in this watch. It's like 20 minutes long, and I have a link in the description so you can go and watch it. But there's this one part that I got past it, but mentally, I'm still laughing about it. And that I think they were trying to show like these celestial bodies going into the watch, very dramatic style. And there's this part where the moon just like explodes into dust and then seems to go into the watch. And again, I think it's supposed to be a positive thing, but all I could think of the entire time was Star Wars and poor Alderaan. And I was just like, JLC just destroyed Alderaan. What are they doing? I mean, where's our moon? Where'd it go? They blew it up. So I saw that last night, and because of that, I couldn't get it out of my head. So I've taken this documentary, and I've made an approximately 90-second trailer that kind of pokes fun at that. It's goofy. It's not particularly good. I'm sticking it here at the end because I did it in case anyone's interested in it. And other than that, I'd love your thoughts on the Calibre 185. Do you guys, obviously it's really complicated. Is it neat? Do you like JLC? I mean, we could talk about other JLC stuff in the comments below because I think they're a really interesting company. And I'm a big fan of the Reverso. Other than that, if you want to be notified when I have new videos coming out, just go ahead and subscribe and enjoy the trailer, or turn this off and don't watch it, whatever you like. But take care, everybody. Talk to you next time.
If you only knew the power of high horology. industry.
The ability to destroy a planet is insignificant next to the power of a reverso.
Cool.